What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Vintage and Stuff with me, Drew Heifetz. Today, I have my homie, Jason Bothe, aka Renee Renee, on the show. He is a legend in the skateboard world, the snowboard world, the fashion world. He's done it all. He is a man of many talents. We talk about all the amazing parts of his life, including the Slam City Jam days, the DC Mountain Lab days, working with brands on collabs. He's produced an album. He's a musician. He's an artist. All kinds of good stuff on this episode. He's a very interesting dude, and we get into this. We get into it all. We get into dealing with mental health through COVID. All kinds of good topics. So enjoy. Thank you for tuning in.
We got vintage clothing by the rack. Just check out my Insta, how you gon' argue with that? Everything you see I manifest. I'm an architect, I think I'ma run it back. We got vintage clothing by the rack. Just check out my Insta, how you gon' argue with that? Everything you see I manifest. I'm an architect, I think I'll have some of that.
Okay, Jason, thank you for coming on the show, dude. I'm very excited to chat with you. I miss seeing you, man. We used to bump into each other like trade shows and different events and stuff, but that's all kind of, I feel like trade shows are dead in general, but
they were kind of on the decline as far as just obviously there's so much online and people are connecting like this nowadays that it just seems, within the skateboard industry and snowboarding and stuff, it was starting to phase out. Like you saw ASR, like the surf expos, everything kind of dipped a bit. I know that those guys, what was Agenda, kind of had taken a last stab at it, and we're doing pretty good, But I just kind of, pandemics and being stuck in your country is kind of destroy. I miss it, It's you get sore hands and elbows from high fives, and it's just kind of like connecting with everyone, which is, again, in our business or whatever business, it's super important, those connections, and just remembering like, oh wow, hey, there's Drew, like I can connect you to, this is perfect, and it's one of those things where with artists, owners, creatives, now there's Clubhouse and there's other things you can kind of, facilitate. But before even the internet, those trade shows were everything,
Yeah, sure, man. And that's kind of, I think that's maybe the last time I saw you was at Agenda, I think. And then, Agenda was rocking kind of at that was like the last few years of it. And then
like 10 years ago.
And then
probably,
Complex
right?
Con kind of like, Complex Con came in as like the new thing, which was more like direct to consumer trade show-esque type deal. But obviously none of that's happened in the last year. So, but I got to tell the story. So you showed up, I'm in the warehouse right now. You've been here. You came here with Trouble Andrew, I believe.
Yeah.
And also Damien of Nate, right? And you showed up. I knew those guys were coming. I didn't really know you were coming. And up to that point, I have only known you as the character Renee Renee. So at first I'm like, oh, who's this guy? Nice guy, Jason, whatever. And then I kind of clue in. I'm like, oh shit, you're Renee Renee. And this was a few years after we had opened our Whistler store, which we kind of just touched on, but off camera, that we had invited you. We sent you a personalized letter. And I got to give my boy...
I love it.
I got to give my boy Pete a shout out for that, because he was like, as we were building the store and building the vibe for that first F as in Frank store in Whistler, you were a big inspiration. And he was like, we got to invite Renee Renee. Like, if he could come as like a celebrity appearance, that would be so epic. So we did send you an invite. I guess you were in California at the time or something, probably working.
Yeah, I think prior engagements, or it was like some DC tour I think I was going on. But I looked at that email probably a couple months ago. I was just going through an old computer and it popped up, and it just brought back all these memories about that. And like I said, I had never met you until I had come to your shop.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, and I don't even think at that point I realized that you were the same person that sent me that email, whatever, 8 years ago. And I think after we started talking, and then, I mean, I was in heaven at your place though. I mean, it's like for me as a digger and someone who's, takes pride in certain pieces and things, it was just like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, I don't have to shop. I just come here and pick out everything you got. Like, there was just so much stuff, man. And like, again, I've been my introduction to thrift stores was my grandpa's funeral. And so I'm the youngest of 4 boys, and my uncle picked us all up and was like, we're going to get you suits. And I'm just like, how can, you know what I mean? Like Uncle Art, like you're driving a Reliant K car. It's almost broken down. Like you can't afford anything. And he took us to this Mission Gospel thrift store in Kelowna. And we're like, pick up whatever you want. And I'm just like, and as a kid, it's a store, right? You don't think of it as, I wasn't looking at prices. I was like, I found a suit. I found shoes. I'm like, can I get a tie? He's like, yeah, I get a tie, socks, the whole 9. I think all 4 of us boys, or 5 of us, because his son got suits, like head to toe suits, ties, shirts, shoes, I think under $20. Nice. Right. And I'm like, what? How come it's so cheap? I was like, what's going on? What kind of store is this? And that was like, I think I was 6 years old. And so from that day on, anytime I had seen a thrift store or any garage sale, like Uncle Art got the bug. He gave it to me, and I was
That's so sick. So yeah, the connection, that early connection to like, this is just a shop. This isn't like secondhand. This isn't thrift. This is just like where you go to buy the clothes.
Yeah, like you didn't. And again, as you got older, everyone's just like, if you shopped at a thrift store, you were poor, right? And you couldn't afford new clothes. So it was kind of like, you didn't want to get caught there or whatnot. And for me, I was like, I wanted to be different. I didn't want to wear what everyone was wearing. I got my first pair of Vans. Actually, my grandma got me my first pair of Vans. And I think I was like early 80s, probably 80, 81 or something, 2-tone blue. They were too small, but I was like, fuck, I'm wearing these things. I got corns now to prove it. But
so
it was like,
your style, you were retro before retro was cool. So you were like, my early memories of you was, I think I first saw you at Slam City Jam. Okay. And I came to Slam City Jam probably 99. I know that's kind of later years even. Yeah. Because that's when I moved out west. And back then, like, you were wild and you were retro. You had this like vibe and style persona, which was so sick because, like you said, even in that era, like late 90s, it wasn't cool yet to like be the thrift store guy. It took a long time to catch on. Some people were doing it, but it was like kind of fringe still,
Well, I think people were doing it, right? And it was, it was still, I mean, in the 90s even. So I moved to LA with a friend of mine who was going to LACC, going to film school. So this is like 93, 93. And so I was down there doing construction, and I actually worked, you probably know the Jet Rag guys.
Oh yeah, totally.
And now, yeah. So I was like, I'm working to building the facade of the Jet Rag store on Fairfax. Oh yeah. It goes deep, dude. And I remember those guys are like, that was the first time I'd seen anyone buy bulk. Like, and I was like, what is this? And they're like, oh yeah, we just buy these pallets. And I forget that the cost was like, what? That's cheap. Like, it was insane.
Yeah. And these guys Jet Rag was on La Brea, right off Fairfax.
Oh,
right?
On La Brea, exactly.
On La Brea, right off near the corner of Melrose and La Brea. And they had like a friggin' bomb that like came into the siding of the store.
Big
Yeah,
jet rag
yeah.
sign, super cool spot.
So I helped build that. That was the store. So I helped build that store. The guy I was working for. Yeah. And so then they introduced me. They had another couple of stores on Melrose as well, like more high end. And I remember that was the first time I was like, you're charging $80 for a like a Anvil t-shirt or something. And I'm just like, really? Like, and that, so back then $80 was like insane amount of money for a used t-shirt. And I kind of like, I'm like who's gonna, and then I see the clientele and I'm like, it's Hollywood and there's celebrities and they, like purchase that stuff. Now I watched some show the other day and they were like going, oh yeah, $800 for like the same shirt. I'm like, what is going on? Like, it's insane.
The market is wild right now. And so you're coming from Vernon too, which is small town BC. That's where you're from, right? Vernon?
Yep, born and raised.
So like you never see a price like that. You would never, well, there would be no vintage stores. There would only be thrift. So like that transition to Hollywood, you're like, wow, like these people are actually into the shit that I would just go out and thrift for like $1.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, it was, and again, even at that point, I was similar to that style. It was like, I would find these classic things. I was really into like early 80s surf culture. There's a brand Surf Rad. I was just like super amped on Surf Rad for some reason. And then also like Hang 10 stuff with like the wooden buttons. Actually, I turned...
Hang 10 did a lot of like velour, like the quarter zips and like really cool texture stuff.
It was the corduroy shorts. That was their jam, right? It was the corduroy short. And then there was also like OP, long sleeve white OP t-shirts were like... For some reason, it was just like, holy grail for me. Like, pumped on that stuff. And then, but yeah, like, I think, so the birth of Renee was almost like over the top. Just like, you know what? I'm going to mesh, because I had like, this style was Serengeti, I called it. And it was like, I was hugely inspired by Beat Street. And so it was like that.
The film, you mean? Like,
yeah. So the film, and obviously, so that would be Grandmaster Flash. I called it like street jungle vibes. So it was, I would match my leopard prints or tiger stripes with like leather and like, kind of the crazy, what were they? The roach clips with the like feathers.
A tail or something? Oh, the feathers.
Yeah. And so I had that kind of Serengeti vibe. And then I had like the LA break-in. So it'd be like, as well as Beat Street 2 had the tracksuits and the Puma and all that. So I kind of like Kangol hats. Let's see if I got one of those. Yeah. Like this hat like inspired the, a lot of the vibes is like the old LL Cool J,
So where did Renee make his first appearance? And when was this like, was this something that you kind of just had as a character? Like you brought out at parties and shit and that it got bigger than you thought? Or were you like calculated and I'm going to create this character for a purpose?
So if I was doing friends of mine from California. Was still actually one of the guys that I met. He produced my album White Heat, which get into that later. But he, so I was doing this character called Graham Dorigo, and he was a biker, and he's like, "You snowboarders are gonna get my fucking. I need you to bring my cocaine across the border, and I'm gonna trade. We're gonna swap it for weed." It was like like what was kind of happening at the time. And so this character, I remember going, Ben Coos. Anyways, his girlfriend at the time was a hairdresser. And I was like, I need you to thin my hair out. So like the whole vibe was like thin spiked hair with a mullet in the back. And like these guys, they had no budget, but I was like, I need Dayton boots. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you got to have Dayton boots. Like if you're a headbanger and a biker, you need Dayton. Yeah. And they were like, like $600 or something ridiculous. But I was like, as soon as I put the boots on, it's like Graham came alive, right? And so I'm definitely the character actor, and I got to get into the characters, right? So that character, Slam City Jam the year before, so I was in this character role, and I think Mike, the guy from Skateboard Canada, was like, dude, this character is awesome. Like, can you go film on the course with like this biker kit? I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, you know, Graham's out there with like, and that's where I first met Rick Cossack and from Big Brother. And I mean, I had met everyone in skateboarding before that, previous Slam Cities.
Yeah.
But this was the first time I introduced the character to the world of skateboarding. And I remember like, Tony Ferguson's like introduced, this is my Uncle Graham, he's from the island, whatever it was. And so like the following year I was at a part, do you know who Rafe is, right? Rafe, he did, oh geez, I can't even think right now. Anyways,
the name's familiar.
Adelberg, he's a designer from,
I know, yeah, totally.
Herman and stuff. But he, we were at a party at his house. And so Graham had kind of started morphing. You know, Graham went from listening to Metallica to listening to Ice-T. So he kind of went from this biker that was into hardcore music, you know, banging, to all of a sudden like, yeah, Ice-T is kind of sick, you know, like this is dope, like rap music. So his hair, he decided to get braids, right? So Graham's mullet turned into braids. And then I went full on like neon. Like it was like, you know, for some reason. So this character was kind of morphed from this character Graham. And then Rafe's like, what's this character's name? And I'm like, I mean, it's so not politically correct, but I was like, what's the gayest name a guy could have? Like, you know, like at the time it was just like, I'm like, Renee. And then I look at him, I go, Renee. And he's like, Renee, Renee. And I'm like, Renee, Renee.
Oh man!
And I mean, it's
so
like
perfect.
I know it's like it's hard to tell the story because it's a different time, just like everything. But that's how kind of Renee, and then Renee went to that Slam City and just like I went full tilt. It was like neon extreme. Like how I looked was the same character that I was putting into it. Kind of like how I put those boots on and I became a biker. It's like I put on all this neon day glow, you know, bedazzlements and just. That's who I was, and
took
busted
over from there, man.
Yeah, and then so Rick Cossack, they did it was like a 5-6 page Big Brother spread that I had an interview in there, and then that was like I'm out, I'm going to LA, like I'm doing this. Renee's going like let's nonstop. I remember
so like. What year was that first Renee Slam City?
I think that was like your first one, like 99 was the
okay.
98 was the Graham Dorigo. I mean, I went to every single one of them, but I never really introduced a character. And so, anyway, so I guess, I went down to LA because I made music with the guy Dustin, who I did the movie with. And that's where we started working on White Heat. And I think we recorded like Panty Sweat and The Sex is Hot and Driving, all like in the early.
I literally just watched Driving on YouTube.
Did you,
brother? Yeah,
I know. I mean, it's crazy because so many people don't. We're living in this weird world where people don't care about history necessarily. It's like whoever's doing it the best right now, that's who's gets the credit kind of thing, I find.
And it is, yeah, I mean, I care about history, FYI.
Yeah. Well, our generation's different, right? Like
totally.
It's nothing against the new generation.
There's too much distraction nonstop that like they're just inundated with distractions that like to go back and look at history takes a little bit of effort, you know?
And I mean, this was even, sorry, I'll go one last thing.
Yeah.
Like on a bus one time and hearing this kid talk about how, you know, someone sampled EPMD, and I'm like sitting there going like, EPMD, like that's cool in the game, like, you know what I mean? Like you're missing part of the stories, right? And I think that, you know, like I love what you're doing and this stuff, but it's like people, you just need to give it to them because otherwise these stories don't get told, and you know, history is forgotten, and modern history is, you know, whoever says hit subscribe and, you know, like my stuff and you're in it because I got 3 kids and they're the same way. It's like if it's over 15 seconds, they don't got time for it, you know? Whereas I'd watch Animal Chin on YouTube, like the whole thing, like sit there and just love it, you know? And I think it's so high, fast paced. And again, like you just kind of got to be a part of it or just, fall into the wayside. So I'm,
and I think there's a place like to use the fast pace world to bring back that history, which is kind of what I'm doing right here. And I've been doing it more because I'm at an age, I'm 40, and I look back at my time in skating and snowboarding, and I love like reminiscing and going and watching those old videos and like pulling up memories, and because it's shaped where we are, the industry, where we are as people, like the rest of your life, because like you've had a crazy life into so many different things, and it's important to know. And I guess a question I had was about this topic is that, like, how do you think Renee Renee would have changed or had a different life in this new age of like instant social media and all that?
Oh, I mean, I think I was always 10 years ahead of the curve. It's even with the clothes and stuff, and this is way before YouTube, right? Like
totally.
A lot of that stuff was, that driving video and all that thing was YouTube was a new tool, and it kind of opened up the eyes to be like, and especially at that time in music, it was, up until that point of home studios and even the garage band, like people can make music. It's pretty easy. But before that, you had to get noticed. You had to go on tour, or you had to go and do these gigs. And so with the advent of technology, now you're seeing Soulja Boy, right? Like there was no Soulja Boy without YouTube, and there's no Soulja Boy without him being able to like produce music himself, without the big studios and without the big engine behind it. And so, which is great because it created so many new artists and new creatives, and kind of changed how we look at the record. And it shook the record industry, right? I mean, even Napster, it shook the way that we listen to music, and how, I remember the iPod 1 or whatever, and it was like this thick. And I was like, I got 1,000 songs. Like, oh my God, it's insane. Like, how can I listen to that many music? And it's like this progression of influence. And we're seeing like, my kids are, it's weird for me because it's like they watch these things and I'm like this is just, it's, for me, I feel like I'm a little more cultured, right? And even with clothes and stuff, and you're like, hey, I can't judge. Look, I'm Renee Renee. I'm the last one to judge. But I mean, when I came into the industry, like gray, red, and blue were the hot colors of DC. Like they, maybe a little gray camo, but there was no pink, there was no neon. It was like drab, and everyone had, they were starting to phase out of baggy and getting a little tighter. And so
yeah, for sure.
But I mean, I want to touch on oh geez, you're good. I just want like the recycling aspect of this whole situation, right? Like I when I moved back to Canada, I started doing some consulting for like a port company, social license, like stuff that's just totally out of my wheelhouse. But I went back to school and learned a lot about the fashion industry, and basically, how
what
much
does that mean, social license
to operate. So it's kind of, it was a hot term back around 2013. Social license is, so I was working with a company that deals with coal, right? So coal is got a bad rap. It's not, obviously there's CO2 emissions. It's kind of, coal dust was this issue that was going on up here from the trains. It was more just like angry White Rock citizens that didn't like the train coming through every day. It had nothing to do with like a health issues. So it was, your social license to operate is basically getting the community, the environmentalists, like everyone on board so that it's socially acceptable to do this kind of work. So when I was looking into coal, I was like, okay, like coal's not, this is tough. Like how do I how do I make this? How do I tell a story about coal? And it was the coal that we have in BC is steel making coal. So there's like 11 coal mines, 8 made steel coal, which is like coking coal, which burns at a certain rate that creates steel. So it's like, well, steel's good. Like steel is in everything, right? Like our phone we're using, our doors, like security, building a house, like nothing exists. So, but I also looked at other, like forms of polluters and that why is it just everyone's focusing on that? So I looked into what it takes to make jeans, right? And like the amount of, and then looking at like in China, just rivers that are just like, what color is that? And the amount of pollution and destruction. And it was kind of like, it led me back to my early days of thrift store shopping at 6 years old and being like, man, like, I wish everyone knew about that back in the, and the true, and what you're doing is you're finding this gold that's being put into dumpsters and thrown away and is garbage, when in reality, the new generation too, with their technology, but they're also appreciative, right? And they're a reason why you're killing it is because of that new generation is understanding and starting to hear these stories, and they don't want to be cookie cutters. They want to be originals, right? Yeah. And how do you do that in a world of H&Ms and just one wear garbage? It's like,
and
well, you go
these H&Ms and all these brands for years were just literally shopping with us or other vintage guys and looking for inspiration from the retro, from the vintage, from the eras gone by, and then they were just pumping their fast fashion out with that inspiration. And finally, the people have caught on. Like, that's what they're doing. That's how it works. That's how the fashion wheel moves. But also they've caught on to the fact that, like, there is another way. There's enough used secondhand clothes on the planet to really, like, last us a long time. And with more people getting involved, there's more of it coming out, that's not getting thrown into landfills, hopefully. And the consciousness of the generation that's coming up, like my kids, your kids, with us teaching them, but also with just what's happening around them, they're going to understand this way more, that it's important to, like, wear secondhand, not throw shit away, not buy stuff that's so disposable all the time.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you'll, when they realize, when you get something that's well made, right, it lasts 50 years. These are quality items, and when you find it and you see these things, and you're just like, wow, like this thing's from 1960, and it looks the same as it did in 1960, and it's just so well put together, and it's like the quality and the craftsmanship just kind of, again, with modernization, and again, it's just like in everything in life, everything gets diluted or cost effectiveness, right? Like, how do we cut corners? How do we do it cheaper? If we make 1 million t-shirts, then it's going to cost us 3 cents a t-shirt. Okay. 700,000 of those are going to be in the trash, but it doesn't matter because our numbers are up.
Yeah.
Right. And it's
also, we know this in the snowboard and maybe not so much skate, but in the snowboard industry, like, certain products are made to last you a finite period of time, so that you can go buy another one when the new shit comes out. Because if they made a snowboard boot last you 6 years, they're losing money, right? So everything is, they used to look at it like, let's make it to last as long as we can because we're into quality craftsmanship. Then it went to, let's make it to last just long enough so that they can buy the next shit when we put it out.
Yeah, because everyone needs a new pair of boots every year, right? Like, after you break them in and they're perfect. Yeah. Like, I think I still had a pair of those Airwalks, like the OG first Airwalk boots ever, with some, like, liners that I got from Burton. They were just the best boots ever. And they were so durable and thick rubber. Like, even, and you understand this when you're around it, like, just the quality of products, like the rubber and gums and everything's changing. And it's like evolution, which is great, Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's wild. Like, and I like, so I used to work with Darren Romanelli when I was in LA at Street Virus.
Oh, nice. Darren Romanelli.
There we go. And the Doctor. So Doctor kind of, he was another obviously innovator and someone that I fully respected. I worked at Street Virus in LA, just kind of, they had a surf brand that I helped him work with. But just being around that creative circle, was amazing. And watching him work, it kind of likens to what you're doing with Frankie and that whole cut and sew and quality though. Like, you know, it's one thing to like, oh, I'm going to take a used sweatshirt and put a shitty tag on it and call it, you know, renewed. But it's like, you know, you're actually thought, like there's thought going into this and there's collections going into it. It's like, okay, let's go. And that's the same thing that Darren did. He would take like these insane 101 type Jordan tracksuits that you're just like, you're gonna cut that up,
yeah,
like,
totally,
right? And then turn that in, and then make 10 new things out of it, you know, that are all like one of a kind pieces. They're just like, you know, really. I don't even know if he looked at it as the green angle. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Well, I don't think anybody did, you know, even 5 years ago. I think even 5 years ago, we were all looking at it like, this is just cool. This is cool. Mm-hmm. This has history. We appreciate the history. We appreciate the fashion. I think it's more recent times that people finally started to realize that this can, you know, on a big scale, have a massive impact, right? And Darren, Jesse knows him really well. I've done business with him a bit, but I've never actually hung out with him. But yeah, see, like when I look at rework, I'm like, I want to take something that maybe doesn't have a lot of intrinsic value and give it more value, right? Yeah. Darren's like, I'm going to take like the most poppin' hot shit at the moment and cut it up.
I'm going to take this like $5,000 shirt and cut it, right?
Yeah, and then add it to 2 more $5,000 shirts.
Yeah.
But yet again, his prices garner that kind of fame. So
I know.
It's really cool. And he's been doing it he's one of like the OGs, and he's kept it like very designer, very niche to his like Hollywood aesthetic.
He's got his seamstress. He's got his girl. Like, you know, just like I'm sure you don't let them, when you find them, you keep them, right? Because they're hard to find, especially the ones that are like do really, really quality work. I mean, he was making pieces for the guy who started World Star Hip Hop before he died. I remember I was like, what is this stuff? And it was like his own personal, the guy from that website or whatever. I was like, holy, oh yeah, it was insane. And then he passed away, but that was kind of sad.
Yeah, Darren's always been a bit of a mystery to me because I see his collections come out. He'll do a project with like not Nordstrom's, but that big department, that really high end
Bergman and Dorf or whatever.
Yeah, and then there's Neiman Marcus and all these different like higher end things. He recently did a Grateful Dead project with a friend of mine. Shout out Deadhead.
He's a big Deadhead.
They made like the lounge chairs out of t-shirts, like those big comfy lounge chairs. But it's because he's very like, it's very curated, very high end, very, you know, you don't see a lot of stuff coming from him. So I don't know. My inquisitive mind's always like, what's he cooking behind the scenes?
Here's another one. So back in the early 90s, I linked up with a friend of mine. His name was Concave Dave from Seattle. And I met him through another friend of mine. They were doing a clothing brand with Mike D called X New. And so X New, this is like way ahead of its time. Basically, I turned Mike D and those guys onto the Hang 10 surf shirts. So what they'd do is they just take kind of like that idea that I was saying, putting a tag on it. They would just go buy rad old vintage stuff and just put an X New little recycled. It was like a recycled.
Because their brand was X large at the time?
Yeah, because it was extra large. Yes. So he started a brand with Mike D and my friend Dave. And then another friend, I think Martini might have even been involved from Van City there.
No way.
Yeah, and so, which was rad because then I met Ricky Powell. I met all those guys. I remember meeting Ricky Powell. So I had found these Fila boat shoes. They're like red, white, and blue, just like, you know, just kind of like a Sperry, but Fila. Yeah. And then, you know, I had my gear, and he's like, Ricky Powell gets off the bus and he starts walking by and he looks down, he sees my shoes and he's just like, who are you? He's like, okay, who's this dude? I've never seen a pair of Fila boat shoes for one. And he was just like, yeah, that was my introduction to Ricky Powell. Was just like, those shoes are dope, kid. Like,
That's awesome.
and then, and then I ended up going to see, I painted a mural at their, this store. They had a record store, I think like Top Shelf or something, with Mike D and my friend Dave. But next door was this vintage shop. And this is my first introduction to how much 501s and Jordan ones were going for. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, bring us some Jordans. We'll give you 500 US. I was like, really? Like, so then, and that was like my first introduction to like shopping for someone else. Like I'd never, even still, I kind of felt bad about it. Cause I'm like, dude, I bought these for like $2. You're going to give me $500. Like, okay. Like, and it would pay for my trip down and stuff. But it was just like,
would literally you'd pack a bag with shit to sell to this store.
Yeah. Yeah. Like 501s, like all the, like white tag, anything. Like if I found a pair of 501s with the paper tag on it, those were like $1,500 or something. Like just insane, totally. Insane. And it was going to Japan. And until I went to Japan to understand the market over there, because $500 was like nothing. They were like
this store called the Heller's Cafe?
What was it? Might have been. It was on 3rd Ave, right down the street from.
This is Seattle.
The guy from the guy from REM owned it. The Crocodile was like a restaurant bar kind of thing on the corner, and then it was down the street and his record shop, and it was right next door, and it was like this rad Japanese people. They were like tripping out.
That's sick. Yeah, see, it's funny when you mentioned like those are the two things that are like the cornerstones of the vintage business.
Yeah,
definitely Levi's, like number one, always has been, always will be, and Jordans. Like those are the two cornerstones, and they're still popping to this day. Like, Jordan ones in the box now could be like 10 grand or something. Yeah. And the denim market's been going up crazy as well. But that's how it started for a lot of people, man. That's super cool. Like that connection to extra large back in those days, because they were pioneers kind of in streetwear. Like they were early on, right? It was like,
it's tough to find that stuff too.
I have a few pieces in my collection of X.
And it cut and sew stuff or just t-shirts?
Oh no, not the X new. Oh well, no, I have X large. Like I have a wicked jacket that they like copied the Powell Bones logo, but like an X large version of it, which is really sick. And I have like a few tees, but not a lot. You're right; it's hard to find. And I look at those like. Those early streetwear companies flocked, obviously like Stussy from the beginning, but then like X large, and I love finding that shit, man.
Dude, look at I just got this yesterday. It's pretty classic. You'd probably appreciate this one. How do I turn that around?
Exco?
Esco,
nice.
Yeah. Old Willie Esco. It's like a medium, and this thing's like massive. Oh my God, this thing is just ridiculous. And I love the fact, because I remember telling you about how I was into like tribal kind of crazy silk dragon shit. This one's got like
fuck yeah, dude.
A monster truck with tribal
so good.
I can't pass it up. Like it's just like it's so. And again, like when I created Renee Renee, was like just stuff that no one wanted, right? Like no one would touch it. And it was just, I remember getting laughed at, and I was like, yes, like they're laughing at me. This is awesome. This is what I wanted. I wanted people to basically, just poke fun at me and give it, like, just look at that loser. And then, and if I heard it, I was like, yes, like I'm winning, In the end, it's like they all started wearing neon, and everyone had like, white Oakleys and the whole vibe. But, in the beginning.
But like you said, you were in 1999 at Slam City Jam, and then we opened in 2007. And when that kind of look in snowboarding and skiing was like a trend.
It started happening. Oh, yeah. Well, they did
so that's like a whole almost 10 years later.
So Ken Block was like, I did the Mountain Lab, right? And it was funny because he's like, I was skating and I was best friends with Danny Way, and we had a band going, and so they had the Mountain Lab, and Ken's like, hey, do you want to, come to the Mountain Lab? It's like, Yeah, like
So are you like childhood buddies with Danny Way just from the BC connection, kind of growing up?
I met him with Colin way back in the day, but we never really like. He was Danny Way and like my ultimate hero, so it was just kind of more me fanning out when I was, 17, 18 years old, to me going down there and I think either Ryan Smith or Colin was like, we're going up to Point X. Danny's doing the Mega Ranch shit. And I was like, sick. And I remember Danny's like, you're Renee. And I had a demo out. I had a 6 or 9 song demo. He's like, you're Renee Renee. He's like, dude, let's make music like right now. And I'm like, dude, okay. Like you just finished like putting down like the craziest hammers I've ever seen in my life. And he's just more amped. He doesn't give a shit about skateboarding right now. He's like, let's make music. And like we wrote this, what was it, Break the Bread or something, those times we had. So when I started jamming with him, I created this sound. I called it Creedleback. So it was like Nickelback and Creed. Oh
man.
And so we did that, and then we started jamming. We did a band, and then pretty much I think for like 3 years I was inseparable. Like we went to like Fiji together. He was going through a separation, so it was kind of like I was the new kind of his new girlfriend. Not really, but you know what I mean. Like we just hung out every day. Like, you want to go surfing? I didn't have a job. I was just like, this is great. Like my job was to party. I got paid by Hurley first, and then DC Shoes would like fly me around the world. Like, okay, you're going to Tokyo. What am I doing? Having fun. Like, make sure everyone else has fun. I'm like, this is easy. I got this.
So epic. I need to know, like, when before Renee Renee and you're like skating, like, were you like, did you ever get paid as like a sponsored skater or anything like that? Okay. So
dude, I was never really a sponsored skater. That's the whole thing. I was like, oh yeah, ex-pro skater Renee Renee. I'm just like, dude, I was just the funny guy. Like I was not, you know what I mean? I was just a commentator. I picked up the mic because I knew, skateboarding, I can do it. I'm not, my friends are really good and I'm okay. Now compared to some people's okay, I might be really good. But compared to my friends, there was no way in hell I was ever going to be a professional skateboarder, even snowboarding too. Like,
so in the early days before that kind of popped for Renee Renee, were you like, what was your kind of dream? And were you just like, I'm just rolling with it. I'm a skater. I like it. I'm meeting people. This is what I'm doing. I'm kind of hanging out.
I was an artist, and then I made music, right? I was an aspiring rapper that didn't have a studio or a hope in hell of doing anything. Right? Like I was a dreamer, and I just like, I DJ'd. So a lot of people don't know that, but I DJ'd like all the clubs in Vancouver, like Sonar, nice. Richards on Richards, like opened up for like Del, the Funky Homo Sapien. It was more, I would just bring my records to the club and be like, I'm playing. Like, that's how I started. And then the people would be like, what the hell? Like, this guy's got crazy music, because I didn't care. I'm just like my clothes. It was eclectic. And I would, I remember the first time I ever felt like I was on the right path was when Biz Marquis DJ'd in Vancouver, and he played, what did he play? He played like Benny and the Jets, right? And I was like, wow, like it's supposed to be hip hop, right? Like in your mind, when you think of hip hop and rap, you don't think of Elton John. You don't think of like normal music, but that's the music that they sampled and got inspiration from to create rap, right? And so I think I got a Mr. Microphone when I was 5, and then I got like a little radio that never turned off. It was in my room. So like my knowledge of 80s music is just like, people are like, how do you know that? Because I slept to it every night. Like I was just like ingrained in my head. And so I actually started the first 80s night in Vancouver at that Sonar.
That down sense.
Yeah, and so then it was like in the late 90s, I wanted to do an early 90s night, right? Because I was like just way too ahead of the time. Like I had to wait another 20 years before there's like, oh, early 90s music is sick, house music and all this kind of stuff. But I was always trying, like, if if it was cool, I didn't want any part of it. I wanted things that weren't cool, and I wanted to make them cool or just be different in that sense, you know. So that was kind of the pushing for.
I think it's cool you said about that music. My brother's a musician. I'm like not musically inclined. I was more like skating, snowboarding, but my brother's like really big in music. He produces drum and bass still to this day.
Oh, send me a track.
Yeah, I will for sure. And he's doing well. Like he got back in as a hobby, and now he's like putting out an album with metalheads.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. Don't stop, kids. Don't stop. Like you said it the other day too, when you were talking about the journey, right? And it's like the journey is the best part of everything, because when you finally get to the end, you're like, what's next? Because you accomplished it. You know, it's like you check these things off, and a lot of time, you know, if you measure success with money, then I don't know, you're not doing it for you know, like money's great.
Where do you go from there? Right?
But love and heart is kind of going to carry you through the hard times, because money will come and go, always come and go, and you get your ups and your downs. But one thing's consistent is you and your passion and what you love and what you know. So people think if you're crazy, like I embrace anyone that says I was nuts or crazy, because I'm like, damn right I am, because I'm going to do it, because the more people that tell me that, then I know I'm doing it right. Like, you know, like
exactly. Like if nobody else is willing to do this, it means I'm going to succeed at this. Right.
Yeah. And you'll be the first or the last, you know, but as long as you're, you know, it's the story that sells everything. Right. So a lot of kids, you know, they're like, how did you do it? And I'm like, you know, I can't, no one's ever going to recreate the way you do it. Right. Like you can steal someone's ideas. Right. But in the end, everything comes to light, and you'll be, especially, you know, people will call you out, you know, like, I don't know if you're on the Clubhouse, it's like whatever, this app, I got into NFT, people are like, you need to make NFTs. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, dude.
and then, so in my hindsight, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go buy, you know, like this iPad, right? Because it's got to be digital art. And then they're like, no, dude, you can just take photos of your stuff. I'm like, what? I'm like, that doesn't, well, how is that? You know, like, and so
it's
then
hard to grasp for our old brain. It took me like weeks to like wrap my head around this whole concept of new digital art and everything.
Well, because you see Trevor, you know,
crushing it. Shout out to Trevor.
Gold toilet for $200,000. You're like, and also like everyone's like, oh, you missed the train, and I'm like, dude, I didn't get in this to like make money. I like art. Art is something I love, and I enjoy making art. And then here's another avenue for me to make art and have a place to show it. I still haven't even minted anything yet. Like I'm so like, everyone's just like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just kind of like watching everything unfold and then figuring my lane out. And so I could just take photos of my art, but then I started, here, I'll show you a little what I'm working on. So I met this guy, I've known him for a while, but I met him on Clubhouse, named Joe Krolik. He's the official video guy for the US skate team.
Okay.
And he's like, which was funny because I took a photo of, it was Darrell Stanton doing like some trick on a rail, and I started to animate it, and I sent it to him, and he's like, because we met in a Clubhouse room, and he's like, oh, like, what are you doing here? What's the space? You know, everyone that comes there is like, because they see me now, and I'm like in these crazy rooms as a moderator, and I'm like, dude,
how you're on it, eh?
Oh, I'm on it.
I gotta hop in, Jason.
I took. Do you have an invite? I'll send you one. I got a ton.
I'm on the app.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. There should be a vintage. We should do a vintage show or something like that. That would be cool.
Yeah, there's some guys I know doing it, but yeah, continue your story.
So I started. He sent me this video or sequence of Ryan DeSanzo. And is like, hey, you know, like, do you want to do a collab with me? And I'm like, yeah, like, you know, so the whole idea is he's the photographer, I'm doing the artwork, and then Ryan's the subject matter. So this is what I've figured out on this app. It's pretty wild and crazy.
Yeah, it's sick.
But like, I didn't know how to do any of this. Like 2 months ago, I could barely open an email. Yeah, so now I'm like, you get inspired by it, and you're like, oh man. And then it's like you open up the can of worms and you're like, oh geez. Why did I do that? Now I got to do that for 16 individual frames. But it's awesome, like, you know, and that's technology, and that's like, you know,
It is, and I think, like, you know, I'm like you in a way, but I try to embrace these things, and I try to like learn about them because, you know, without doing my head in of the speed of the world either, because you're like, fuck, this is all moving so fast. Took me like weeks to even grasp this concept, and then all these new things are coming out. It's like, it's a lot, but my inquisitive mind, I like to learn about this stuff, and it's a wild world we live in, and it came from video games, eh? It came from like Minecraft or something, where people were like building like a sword or something, and kids would buy it. So our kids are going to be like so on this compared to us.
They're already on it. Like my son, they're on Roblox, right? So exactly. Roblox is like they're buying skins, right? Which is basically, skins are like NFTs. It's you know, what I'm hearing too is like Fortnite probably is going to create a virtual world, and everyone can have their own houses. And, you know, this is crazy because someone talked to me about this like 15 years ago, and I thought they were just batshit crazy, right? Like, I'm like, who's going to do that? Why would you go to a virtual club when you can go to the club? Well, COVID didn't happen 15 years ago, right? And now it's like, if they would have launched during COVID, like, it would be over. Like, people would just be like, you know, I mean, that's what you should do. Your NFTs should be virtual clothing. Like, some of your like prized pieces, you should digitize and like turn them, and basically kind of how Trevor's doing it with like the ghost turning and stuff. You should do some of your vintage pieces on there and sell them as NFTs.
Toyed with some ideas for sure.
But then, so what you do is you sell the actual piece too, and that's what, like, people that buy that there's like a gold edition, and then you got 10, you know, silver editions that you know come with a picture of it, and then whoever buys the main one, they get the
actual garment.
And the special NFT. I mean, it's crazy. Like, people are making, you know, insane. And it's weird because there's no rhyme or reason to what people are buying. Like, people are buying farts, you know, literally.
Oh my God. I need to get back to the Mountain Lab, man. I want you to talk about this because I think such a crazy thing. Like, you know, how Renee got to go, well, you got to go to Mountain Lab, and then you said you were paid by DC to like go party. And then you did, I think, were you're personal friends with Ken Block, and you got to like go and ride in a Gincana video?
I was at his wedding. Yeah, nice. It's funny. So we did the DC, the ride along, which I still love today because like people are so like, Ken's like hates that guy. Like, dude, get out of the car. Like, so they took Ken did these celebrity ride alongs or whatever, and there was like tons of celebrities, like all these different people. I was pretending like I was scared and like like screaming, like, because sitting there like this in a rally car, it's not entertaining, right? So I was just like, I wasn't scared. I was acting, and I put on this show like like coughing and stuff. And there's like, I don't know, 1,000 comments like, that guy said, like, just negative. Like, if I was in there with Ken, I wouldn't say anything. And it's like, well, yeah, no one would watch it. And it's got like, it's like 5 million views, like, of me. And then there's one with like Ricky Carmichael or whoever, and it's got like 200,000 views. And it's like the one with me's like in the goofy gear. Like, oh, super wilding. But yeah, like, I remember Ken brought me out. He didn't know I snowboarded. He's like, oh, let's go snowboarding. And I was like, yeah, let's go. And I was up there, and Pierre Wickberg, who was like he did Robot Food and this awesome cinematographer, is like, they just love me. They're like, dude, like, let's film. And I'm like, you're going to film me? Like, I grew up with the Whiskey Guys, and they didn't once ever put the camera on me unless I was singing Michael Jackson. You know, snowboarding, it was like no one filmed me or skating.
Did you get cameos in the Whiskey films?
Yeah, I was in the first Whiskey. I was singing Beat It, like on the it's just a thriller night with like
that
dreadlocks.
So epic, man. I grew up with that shit. I went to Whistler in '93, and Sean and Sean the two Seans were my coaches. And I remember like the first time I got drunk was because they bought me beer. I think we bought weed from them. I was like 13.
For sure.
And I remember going home after that summer, and I was the coolest kid because I was like, dude, I hung out with the Seans and fucking Whistler, the Whiskey Boys. And that was like I think that was like Whiskey 2, 93 or something.
Yeah. I knew the Seans before the Seans knew each other. So I went to Sean Johnson. I grew up. He grew up in Vernon too. He sat behind me in third grade, and then I moved to North Van and met Sean Kearns at Sealand Bowl, probably in the late '80s, 86. He was ripped, dude. Kearns ripped on a skateboard. He won the bowl series one year or something. Yeah.
Oh, really? No shit.
Yeah.
Kearns, I know he surfs a lot now, and he was dating my friend Alicia recently. So I haven't actually hung out with him, but I know he's doing cool things like based around like mental health and interesting projects.
I mean, I don't know. I might be a conspiracy theorist, but there was this girl was doing a documentary on whiskey and came to my house in LA back in, I guess, middle of 2006 or 7 or something. They were making a documentary about whiskey. And they interviewed me and we talked. It was fun. And then I never heard anything about it. And then I finally was like, yo, what happened to the girl that was making the whiskey? She's like, oh, she works for Dick House now.
What's
and I was
Dick
like,
House?
what? Dick House is the Jackass guys.
Oh, no shit.
So the Jackass guys. So this is my this is I always stir this up too, and everyone probably gets So Sean Kearns and Sean Johnson went to Big Brother, or to Blunt Magazine, which was run by Mr. Jeff Tremaine.
And wasn't Blunt and Big Brother also connected to Hustler?
Yeah. Well, so Hustler bought Big Brother because of Blunt, not because of Big Brother. They bought it because of Blunt Magazine. And I think Ken Block was the creative director, and then Jeff Tremaine was the what do they call it? Whoever the big boss or whatever. And so whiskey came out, and there was a big article in Blunt Magazine about whiskey, and then they came down to California. I think I was there with Sean. One of the times we went into El Segundo to like the World Industries, because that's where it was based out of before Larry Flint bought it. And so anyways, Jeff and the two Seans had a meeting at a bar, or a meeting about Sean wanted to do a video of just hijinks. No snowboarding or skateboarding, just like fucking crazy Jackass type shit, right? Yeah. And then so whatever happened, that meeting, they left, and then Jeff called, I guess, Johnny Knoxville and Spike Jones and Bam Margera, and they decided to make Jackass, which was a video or a show about not, just crazy stunts and hijinks. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the Big Brother, they had already done, I think they had made a Big Brother video. I think Johnny Knoxville might have been in, like, when he tried to shoot himself and stuff. Like, a lot of the stuff that was in Jackass was in the Big Brother videos. So
yeah, and I think like there's no doubt in my mind that whiskey inspired that whole fucking generation, and lots of other people that have done it since.
Yeah.
Like, no fucking doubt, man. And it's like, that's something as Canadians we can be proud of, the whiskey, and you were part of it. But speaking on that documentary, that girl made that documentary, and my friend Dave has a copy. He's entrusted with this copy. He's like, you can watch it, but I can't give it to you. You come to my house and watch it, but I can't give it to anyone. I've like sworn to secrecy because something happened with her. She was dating Kearns, I think, at one point or something before.
Yeah, well, I think I don't know what deal or what happened. We'll never know, I guess. But all of a sudden, she was making this documentary, and now she works for the enemy, or not the enemy, but works for the guys who
so
basically.
If you ever come to Squamish, you should come to Squamish. We'll go to my buddy Dave's house. We're going to watch this.
Am I in it? Did I make it?
Probably. Fuck, if you got interviewed.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
Oh, I haven't seen it yet because he keeps telling me, like, I've hung out with him a few times recently, but we haven't sat down and watched it. But let's do it together.
That would be amazing. I would love to do that. And I definitely need to get up to Squamish.
Yeah, man, come for a visit.
There's a surf park being built.
Yeah, you heard about that?
You're back. Yeah, I'm dying for that.
That would be so epic. Have you ever surfed any of the man-made waves?
Not really, not the good ones. No, I kind of missed out because I moved back up here and all that stuff happened. I knew about Kelly's stuff just because I was good friends with like Benji Weatherly and Rob Machado and all those guys that I had linked up with when I lived down there. And so I would just see, they'd tell me like, oh, dude, Kelly's building this crazy thing. I mean, Kelly's thing's the best looking wave. It's just the cost is so insane. Like for his engines or whatever that's pumping it is like next level, you know. But they're the guys out of Spain, I think, Wave Garden guys. They seem to have got it figured out as far as cost effectiveness, and they're able to like build it. You know, like Kelly's, you need like a lot of land, you know, like even more land that they have at that the sand pit there near Britannia. We used to go dirt biking at.
Yeah, that lot just gets used for like movie
everything
sets or whatever.
Parking
out all the time. There's those wave lakes that some company in Australia did where it's like
the pump. Yeah.
And it looks cool. Like from the news they've put out that they've sold a bunch of them around America and around the world. So those are going to be popping up different places.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. I've never surfed any of them. I'm dying to get more waves, to be honest. After COVID, I've surfed like 3 times in a year.
I finally did the wake surfing, which was pretty fun last summer.
Nice.
I mean, it's cool. It's like, you know, I could see if those kids get into a wave, you know, Canada might have a world champion. Just the amount of wake surfers in Kelowna. Jeez, it's like
I've done it once, but it is addicting because you get to ride a wave for a long time.
Oh yeah, it's just like your legs get sore surfing, which is like, you know, unheard of.
Totally
unheard of.
So I read on your IMDb, is that what it's called? IMDb,
sure,
that you painted for the Thai Prince of Bangkok.
Mm-hmm.
This is quite a hefty little tidbit of info on your IMDb. So you want to explain?
So I was in a friend of mine who was from Kelowna, this guy Johan. He started the first ever Thai rap group. He was the DJ. He found like a Thai rapper. There was like another girl she was a singer. And so they made it big in Thailand. And so I was working with his brother in Kelowna at the Capri Hotel, and he's like, oh, you should go to Thailand. I was like, okay. So I went to Thailand, never met the guy, and we hung out, and then we started just hanging. Actually, we did a little drug. I guess I could talk about this. It's part of the story. We went up to the Golden Triangle and smuggled like a kilo of the best weed Thailand had ever seen, like no seeds. It was like, it's the most insane story. I want to write a book one day. But anyway, so we came back to the city. We came back to Bangkok with all this, like just the greenest, perfectest weed. And we'd go to these events and parties and just like throw like weed on tables. And everyone's just like, what is this? Like freaking out. And so because of that, I ended up painting. Someone was like, hey, do you want to paint this nightclub? And I'm like, okay, I'll paint a nightclub. Like, seems fine. Like, I don't even think I knew how to like spray paint. Like I was like, okay, let's do it. I remember not even having a mask, getting so fucking high, just like, whoa. I painted a nightclub in like 12 hours. This two-story, like, and I guess it was called Deeper, and the club actually turned out, like after I left, to be like one of the biggest nightclubs in Southeast Asia. Like all these like huge DJs going there. And I remember running into someone and being like, oh, did you ever look at the artwork on the walls? He's like, yeah, that was crazy stuff. And I'm like, no way, it's still there. And I'm like, yeah, I painted that. They're like, no way, dude, that's dope. So because I painted the nightclub, someone approached me. It was called the Red Hot Society. And it was an AIDS charity that ran globally. I know Keith Haring did like some artwork for it. The event in Thailand was called Red Hot and Positive, and it was like an HIV thing. And the girl was like, hey, would you donate a painting? And I was like, dude, why don't I just paint it live? And they're like, what? Like, you do that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, whatever, right? Like, I was pretty quick at painting. And so he's like, this is amazing, right? So it was at this nightclub. I was out there, I was doing like, you know, I kind of put black line and then I color in kind of color by number style. So before I had hit any color, all of a sudden this Ferrari pulls up and this old guy and this girl get out. And I'm just like, oh, cool. I'm going to make it red, right? And it's red, hot, and positive. Perfect. Everything makes sense. So I like painted this painting. They're like, we got to go. The auction's happening. I'm just like, oh shit. Like, you know, it was like 2 hours to do this big canvas. And so we go in and it's like a silent auction or they're bidding on it. And I knew two of our friends that were sitting in the front row. They owned the Lamborghini dealership that we had met. Like, they're big potheads and they're from Dubai or wherever. And they were like, you know, excited. They're bidding on it. I saw them. They're bidding on the painting. And then all of a sudden there's like this murmur, like, oh, you know, talking. And everyone's like, what? And I'm like, and my friend's like, dude. And I'm like, what? And he's like, holy shit. He's like, the prince, the king's brother is fucking bidding on your piece right now. And because he even bid once, everyone else backed out and was just like, they don't, because you don't.
We're not messing with this guy.
You don't. Oh yeah, you don't mess with it. If the prince wanted, it was like Prince Tittleband Ugala or something. I remember. And anyway, so the DJ of the night, funny enough, Paul Oakenfold, right? Some little guy out of London or whatnot. He's DJing this party that I painted this thing at. It ends up the prince buys the painting for like 20,000, like whatever it was, which at the time, like normal Thai artists would sell their stuff for like 100, and I got 20,000 or something, bought it. And so people are coming up to me and like bowing to me. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? They're like, dude, like you have no idea. Oh my God. Like my friend Johan's just freaking out. And so they're like, he wants to meet you. He wants to meet the artist. And I'm like, okay. Like, so I go in this room and everyone's on the floor except for the prince and his girlfriend. His girlfriend, like he must've been 60. His girlfriend was like 22 or something. I was like, I hope that's your cousin or something. Like, I don't know what is going on here. And so I'm like, I sit right next to him, right? Everyone's on the floor, like below him. I have no idea culture. I'm like so new, like no clueless. And it was perfect because my friend who was like, he was a photographer that won like a crazy award for Time Magazine. He like just a awesome, crazy guy. But he's like sitting there giggling, laughing, like, because he knows exactly what's going on. So I'm sitting next to the prince, and the prince is like, he's about 5'0", and I'm like 6'3", so he's like about here. I'm just towering over him, and everyone in the room's just, oh my God, like shaking their head. And he's like, finally, he's like, oh, let's go dance, right? And I'm like, okay, let's go dance. And so we go out dancing, and he doesn't realize that I'm all legs. So I'm like even taller than him on the dance floor, and he's sitting there. Paul Oakenfold's playing. He's DJing to me, the Prince of Thailand, and his girlfriend. And it's just like there's about like 5,000 people all around us, and I'm just like, you know, cutting the rug with the.
That is an amazing story.
So then he's like, after that, he's like, fuck, I'm out of here. So then my buddy Johan's like, he's like, you need to get his card. Go get his card. It's like the get out of jail free card. If you have anything royal, it's like you can just, here you go. Like, oh, sir, you have 5,000 grams of cocaine here. Oh, here's the card. Like, yeah, you're good to go. See you later. Like, it's like basically, it was like a get out of jail free card. So I go and I'm like, hey, Prince. He's looking at me like, you fucking asshole, get out of here, right? And then I'm like, can I get your card? And he's like, I gave it to the DJ. And I look over and there's Paul Oakenfold. I'm like, you fucker. Like, you asshole.
I got the card.
Oh, he knew it too. He was like, he's no dummy.
And then little does the prince know that he bought a painting from somebody who just smuggled a ton of weed in his country, which is fucking awesome.
But it made news because it was like it was basically the royal family was like saying, yes, AIDS is, you know, because up until that point they had no affiliation. Like I think he even caught shit for showing up at that event
because they didn't want to acknowledge it, like as a.
It was just the royal family and AIDS, like. I don't know. Like the king is like very revered and nothing against, like there was negative. Everyone there was like, this is incredible. Like incredible that this guy bought your piece, like all these, like, you know, it was just wild. And then after that, I sold tons of art to like all these people there. Like they wanted, you know, some paintings. I sold some to different collectors.
So that kind of blew you up and made your trip, eh? Like,
I mean, it just looks good on the resume too, to say that I sold a painting to the Prince of Thailand. I think it was, I don't even know if he was the prince, the king's wife's brother. That's who it was. But still, he's a prince.
Yeah. Pretty great story, man. Pretty great story. And what were you even in Thailand for? Just on a trip with the boys?
Yeah, no. So my friend, like I said, I brought all my records over there. I wanted to make music with my buddy who had the Thai rap band. Dude, it was so funny. On like New Year's Eve, I performed. Was it You Down with OPP? With my buddy, like in front of like 10,000 people. Triggers from the good town, ill town. So that's how it feels now. The deals that we use and we steal round to lamp with the freestyle phantom. We're trying to be answering. Dude, I remember like memorizing that song. I was like, fuck, this guy's a good rapper. But yeah, It was super funny.
The crowd probably was going off, eh?
Oh, they were going off. Yeah. It was the two white boys from Kelowna setting it off.
Nice.
Oh, dude. I remember actually, I was just thinking about the Big Brother. I remember going into Big Brother, full Renee Renee. And they're like, I'm like, where's Suge's where's Suge at? And they're like, oh, he's down here. Go. I was like literally gonna go white boy my ass up into Death Row Records. Like, let me rap for you guys in Head to Toe Neon. And like someone was just like, dude, you can't, like, you're gonna get shot, like you killed. Like they hung Vanilla Ice over the side of the building, like, and I'm like, what? Like I was just did not care. Like I was like, dude, I am gonna go for it. Put me on Apollo, like I'll rap. I don't, you know.
Which is like a testament to you and your amazing adventures, because that's kind of like, it's from what I can gather, it seems like how you always lived.
Dude, I've always, you know, and it's funny because I think like finally money and wealth are coming my way, but I never, like, even opportunities, like brands came out that just totally took what Renee Renee was doing and packaged it and made millions and millions of dollars. And I kind of was like, and everyone would be like, aren't you mad? I'm just like, fuck, dude, it's not my time, or I'm not, you know, like, do I want to do that? Do I want to sell something that brings me so much joy? And that I didn't do it to sell it. Like, you know, obviously now I'm like, fuck, I should have done something, but you know, everything happens for a reason. And I feel like now I'm at a stage where it's like, dude, I've started like 8 different companies in the past 6 months, like just building so much cool stuff that isn't necessarily my wheelhouse, but it's like I have really, really good connections with, you know, like someone's like, dude, you need to monetize your Rolodex, is what it used to be called in the back in the day, Rolodex. But it's like, my connections are my money. And I'm like, I guess I never really thought about it, you know, and I've never asked anyone for anything, you know. It's just like, so I think it's like prime for me, and I'm finding out like I have these just incredible friends and connections that are now one phone call away to connect them with someone else. And now I'm created a business with 2 of my friends, and I'm a part of it, you know, and just from those great relationships that you've built over the years. I'm sure the same with you, like people that you probably never thought you'd be working with, kids you introduced to the game are now like you're working with,
totally.
You know,
and it
like,
took me a while to realize that. Like I wouldn't say I burned bridges, but I wouldn't put enough energy into certain relationships, I think, a long time ago. And I finally realized, like, you never know. Like, you got to, like, treat everybody
the
equal.
Same.
They are equal. You got to treat them that way. It's like, if this guy's famous, he doesn't get no more respect than the other guy, because you don't know this guy down here one day could be, like, your business partner or somebody who's helping you out or whatever it is. And I've learned that over time. So, yes, I definitely have a lot of connections. And but it took me a while, man. It took me a while.
I mean, first impressions for me, it's like I have no time for someone that has an attitude or thinks they're better than anybody, and it'll be like it could be a $10 million thing, and this person is just like out the gate is a dick. I don't care. I don't care about money like that, right? I care about relationships. I care about doing rad stuff that makes a difference, that changes people's lives. That, you know, like Renee was I was entertaining everyone. I made people laugh. Like that was enough for me, and that's why you do it, you know?
Totally. And that's important. That's super important. It's super important to laugh. It's super important to be able to laugh at yourself, which you fucking do the best of anybody. But that's like therapy. It's healing, man.
Yeah. What is it? Like, you know, what is life really in that sense? Like you said, it's like you save up, right? You work your ass off to buy that car. You get the car 2 hours in, you're just like, yeah, I got a car. Now I got payments.
Yeah,
now, you know, it becomes like you're what you're trying to achieve all of a sudden drags you back down, because you got to, all of a sudden, you know, Ferraris aren't cheap to get an oil change or whatever it is, if that's your dream. But it's like you achieve these goals, and it's kind of, you know, that's why you just set unrealistic goals, right? Like just shoot for the moon. Fuck it.
This is where you're going to be happy, in the middle, not there.
Even if you set your goal so high that you get like 1 foot, you know, and it's 1,000 feet, you get 1 foot, you're like, fuck, right, I got a foot. You know, like the expectations of what you're shooting for are just so ridiculous that it doesn't matter where you end up. And the funny part is like all that is meaningless. It's the journey when you look back, and the story that is everything. Because without the story or the, you know, then you're just someone with money or opportunity. Here you go, right? Like you don't appreciate what you have until you fail, or the struggle is the most important. Everyone, you know, like any situation, I was watching this Miles Davis documentary last night, and just like, it was really interesting. So in America at the time, in the 50s or late 40s, like black people, obviously nothing's changed. They're still treated a certain way. And he goes to Paris, and he's like treated like a king. He's hanging out with Pablo Picasso and all these, like, you know, artists and this high culture, and everyone just kind of treats him like he's a god, you know, and there's no color boundaries. And it's like, he's around peers and around people that are at his level of creativity and at his level of understanding, you know. And it was just like, it's wild to think that that's like, you know, 50s, you know, obviously, I don't know if it's just France is so close to Africa, or there's like it's not as racially screwed up as America is, but it was just interesting to like, just to see this person, like, and also him going through, he reinvented himself like 15 times, you know. Like, I don't know if you're a fan of Miles Davis, but like, I mean, the guy is just very interesting story.
Not a fan, but my brother would be a big fan. He takes a lot of inspo from that genre, but so he reinvented himself in what way? Just his image, his vibe, his music?
Musically. Like, you know, musically he would, and style. Like, I mean, the dude, he was driving a Ferrari, right? Like back in the 50s. Like he was like on top of and he was smart and business savvy. And so he went to Juilliard. He, like, you know, was at night he'd go to like Birdland and play with like Charlie Parker. And then in the day he's studying classical music, and like all his homies are like, why are you learning that white man music? You know? And he just was like looking at it like, well, I just want to learn. I want to see what's up. Like, I want to learn it all. I want to, you know, I don't want to base my, idea of what something is by someone else saying that it's this. I want to go and discover it and understand it, you know. And I think he just kind of like, because of that, he I don't know, just like super again, like I just watched this last night and I'm just like, wow, that's crazy. And he would reinvent the way he looked, you know. He also was, you know, a drug addict and whatnot. And so when he came back from Paris, you know, he got hooked on heroin, because it was like, fuck, he just came from a place where he's treated like a king and royalty. And then he comes home to his home and he's treated like second class citizen. And you know, and I think like for me, it was funny, like in Vancouver, I was kind of viewed as, oh, it's just Renee, right? Like it's like no biggie, right? And I knew that if I wanted to make it in Canada, I had to go outside of Canada to do something before I would be recognized here, you know. And I'm sure it's the same with you. Like you're doing all this stuff in Canada, it's one thing, but then you go to Pasadena and you're down there, everyone's just like, holy shit, like you guys are the kings, you know. And
it's like the big in Japan kind of mentality,
kind of, right? I mean, I was in Japan too. Like, I mean, I would go there and it was insane, like massive fans, and you know,
it's true. I mean, us as Canadians always think that too. You know, we got to get outside of Canada. Canada, it's like big fish in a small pond thing going on. You know, there's not enough of a market here. The fashion scene isn't cool enough, or the music scene isn't cool enough. You're right, man. And a lot of people, they want to get outside of that bubble, and they want to get outside of that.
You get stuck in that idea that, you know, you need, like, you really don't. Like, there's so much talent here, right? And we see it like in every industry.
Recognize the community. Like, it's important to nurture your own community before you're trying to get out and nurture like the rest of the world's community.
Yeah. But a lot of times, like, you don't get appreciated, right? And it does, like, you got to go and venture off, spread your wings, and then, you know, to be accepted in your own community, which is weird. You know, I think it's changing, and I think what's changed is that it's like you can be anywhere. You could live in the Arctic Circle and be a YouTube phenomenon. Right? Like, it doesn't matter where you are. Like, I was under the assumption that if I wanted to be an actor, I had to go to Hollywood, right? If you wanted to be a rapper, you had to go to New York, or, you know, like all these preconceived notions of what you think you need to do, which is like now with technology, you can be in Vernon, you know? Yeah. You could do it from wherever you're at, like depending on what you want to do, but
it is true though. The perception is different. Like even in Toronto, you go to the club and Drake will like come roll up to the club in Toronto, you know, with his crew, and everyone's like, it's just Drake. Like we see the guy like all the time, like whatever, no big deal, it's Drake. But then anybody else would be like, holy shit, Drake's at this club with like 50 people. It's the biggest freaking deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is situational, but you're right. You can do it all from anywhere now, especially, you know, and nowadays nobody even has to know where the hell you are. You can be anywhere, and you can be another place, really.
And I mean, people are making a living, right? Without leaving Vernon. Like, I could technically just, you know, be in the Okanagan shopping vintage finds, or who knows, right? Like, I mean, whatever your passion is, whatever you want to do, like it really is up to you. And again, like I said, make your goals really extremely high.
Yeah.
Like I want to.
So talk to us. You said you've been working on businesses. Like, is there any of them you want to talk about? And like,
well, I'm doing so my partner's Indigenous. She's First Nations. And so we started, obviously she's not a big skateboarder, but I am. And I've always wanted to do a skateboard brand, and I'm also very passionate about Indigenous art and culture. So we've started because we've got all the tech packs, all, you know, like, again, like me having, you know, no idea what it takes to do anything. It's just like, oh, I got a great idea, let's do it, you know. And it's like, luckily my partner's the CEO of like 11 different companies already. So she's kind of like knows how to start businesses, how to, you know, we were able to get a grant, some seed money. We bought like 2,000 skateboards. Nice. Working with Ultimate and Kevin Harris is kind of helping us, you know, baby step it along. Actually, this artwork is a friend of mine. He's a Métis artist that I worked in the film industry with. So we took his art and we made the boards out of it. My partner Brenda, you know, she just cold calls Zoomies, sends them an email, and basically we went from nothing to now we're just filling out our Zoomies contract as far as being a vendor for them.
Wow.
And they have a whole like social department thing that they're doing with, you know, just feel good stories. So we're kind of, like the door is opened. And again, just kind of connections and people I've met. And
yeah, like
so
you
there's
said,
that.
Kevin, utilizing your connection with Kevin, and I'm sure different people to help you produce product, and you know, making those calls. And it's like, you know,
totally like, you know, from the designer, my friend Joe, you know, helped me out and did the tech packs. And you know, obviously there's costs, but it's not as expensive as hiring these people, right? It's like I have connections to, at least not yet, until you're up and running. And I know like just businesses, it's like, oh yeah, you're this, you're that, you're, you know, and you're giving titles to people that don't know what they're doing. And it's just kind of
like,
you know,
beyond the money you pay to these people for their work, sometimes just finding a designer, even if you have the money, is super hard on its own. Cause like, you know, when you have the Rolodex, like you said, where you're like, I know this guy can do this kind of art. I know this guy does graphics layouts. I know this guy does that. At least they're at your disposal when you need them, instead of like having to go out and like cold call on Craigslist or something and get some random person, right?
No, definitely. I mean, and again, it's like, I haven't made anything and people are like, we'll buy it. Right? Like whatever you're doing, you know, based on my relationships and based on how I've treated people my whole life. Like I go out of my way to help others for no other reason that it makes me feel good, you know? And I think when you live that, when you don't fake that and you just kind of like, and another thing is my partner too, like Indigenous, it's like they live by, or at least she does, the 7 laws, you know, that are like health, happiness, humbleness, community, generations, generosity. Like there's just, that's how you are. Like, you know, you're just good. Just be good. Like, you know, and obviously business is cutthroat and at some point, you know, you got to be the boss, but you know, it's always better to start with a gift than to ask for something, you know? And so I've always just kind of like, I don't know, like whether I knew this, all the years that I never made any money of what I made enough to survive, but I was happy. I didn't care. Like, you know, I was like, I had kids and then all of a sudden you're like, shit, it's expensive. Hockey's not cheap, you know? But like, I didn't, you know, like I always knew everything would work out. I always knew that it didn't matter. Like, you know, I was working in film because, you know, I mean, I went through a separation. I've, you know, like for some shit I shouldn't be smiling, right? Like life happens and sometimes it sucks and it's hard, right? And it's up to you how you deal with it and how, if you let it affect you and poor me and miserable, guess what? Law of attraction, you attract more shit. More horrible stuff comes your way when you're like, oh, I suck, I'm this, and you know, like you start believing what others tell you. Whereas if you just in your mind go, I'm still me, I'm still that nice guy, I still, you know what I mean, would give the shirt off my back to anyone that asked, you know, and not just because it makes me feel fucking great to do that kind of stuff, you know. Like here's like Currency, you know, Currency the rapper. Yeah. So I'm on a flight from Miami. I get off there. I see this. I don't know who he is, and he's wearing he had a Supreme backpack or something. So I just kind of like, oh, okay, like this kid knows what's up. And this is like, you know, 95 or something. And he comes over to me. He's like, dude, that's a dope hat. And there's like a DC hat. And I'm just like, I go, what's your size? Like 7 3/4. I'm like, dude, it's yours. He's like, you can't give me the hat off your head. I'm like, I just did. Like, I'm out, you know. And he's like, what's your name? Like, who are you? Like, why? Like, I don't get it. Like, he just didn't understand why someone would be nice or just do that, right? And it's just like, to me, it's like nothing means anything. Like, you know, there's a great story. I was in Thailand and a friend of mine gave me this Phillips 66 like gasoline jacket. Really dope. Like, you know, like a very vintage piece. I love those. And so I'm in this village and I befriended this Akamama.
And she's like, she starts pulling on my shirt, like the jacket, like, I want this, right? And I'm like, I've never questioned anyone asked me for anything. Up until this point, I'd always just like, totally, right? And so because it was a gift, because this jacket was a gift, I had to think what he would say if I gave it to this woman, right? And if it was, if he's going to be mad that he gave me this special gift to me, personally to me, and if I just gave it to someone, he would be pissed, right? And so I thought, I'm like, what would Jordan, like, what would he do? And because I hesitated, she's like, she knew it meant something to me. And I was like, I took it off. She's like, no. Like, I know. She knew that there was something more than just wasn't a jacket, right? Like, there was a gift involved. But of course, me, I thought, what would Jordan would say, give her that jacket. She wants it, right? Like, and obviously the monetary value, the sentimental value it wasn't about how much it was worth. It was that my friend gave it to me, and the friend that gave it to me was the one that convinced me to go to Thailand to experience this moment. And so I literally hesitated, like, for 1 second, like just 1 second. And she's like, oh no. And I'm like, no, I gave it to her. All of a sudden, like, we both start crying, and we're in this room, and it's like, there's about 100 people, like kids, everyone. It's like our last night in this hill tribe. And I like start crying. I'm giving her the jacket. She's like, I can't take the jacket. And we're like bawling. Next thing you know, there's 100 grown-ups and kids. We're all crying, like literally tears. And no one knows why. And it's because of that moment of me being like, Jordan would love me to give this to her, right? And if I wouldn't have hesitated, then none of this would have happened, because I thought for 1 second about the person who gave it to me, what they would say, because it was like a very special, when he gave it to me, I was like, what? Like, you're giving me your favorite jacket? Like, this is crazy. And so that moment of like giving it to her and the tears and like, I can never get that image out of my mind of the joy of giving, right? Like tears of joy.
I love that story,
and like,
man.
She probably still wearing that jacket, like it's hot as hell in the Thai jungle, and she's wearing this jacket, and it probably means so much to her, and maybe hopefully someone asks her for the jacket and she has the same moment and that same crazy mixed like emotions. Like, it was just like the wildest moment, and you're on these paths and you don't know where it's going, and it's like that just opened me up to like the power of giving. And what I got out of it, I couldn't pay. You cannot pay for that moment, right? Like, There's no money. You can't recreate that, and so like, again, like, cherish your relationships with people. Even dicks sometimes have meaning in your life. Sometimes those assholes are the fuel you need to be like, fuck, that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Like, I'm going to do it. Don't stop chasing dreams. Keep shoot for the top, like, and again, like I said, if you don't make it, at least you had a high expectation.
Yeah, totally.
No matter where you end up, right? Like, I mean, my stories, I feel like I turn 50 next year, and I'm like halfway done my story. Like, my life is just starting again. Like, it's like this rebirth that I'm having, and the opportunities are just going to be like, I'm wondering what we're going to do together. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? There's obviously something, and keep in touch with people, right? Like, even it's so funny too, when you have like just things that happen that are like, there's no coincidences, right? Like, it's like a friend that we're working on a business with, he sends me a video clip of Ryan DeCenzo because it was on TV on Global, not knowing that that's who I'm doing this NFT with, right? With Ryan. And it was just like, what? That is so weird. Like, that, how, and the universe is at work always, like,
and you have to start like opening your mind to see those moments, because a lot of people don't recognize, like you said, there are no coincidences. These things happen for reasons. And when you open up to accept that things around you are happening for a reason, it all kind of starts to make sense. And I feel like when I did that, more opportunities started to materialize, because I'm like, I'm open now and I'm letting the opportunities come, you know?
Yeah.
And again, that took me a while to get that, because I was
like I said, I'm 50 and I'm just getting it now. You know, like I think I did it my whole life, but now I'm actually like open to it and being like, wow, this really, you know, like I remember like being down in the dumps and thinking, you know, like negative shit. And guess what? It kept getting worse, you know? And I literally pulled myself out of depression this year. Like my new partners kind of like saved me in a sense. Like here I am, like I admit it, you know, that I was depressed, that I hold it in, that maybe me being this outlandish, crazy character was just a means to hide, you know, the depression that I had, and getting others to laugh at me or whatever it was, like stemming from who knows, childhood trauma or generational trauma. I don't know. Like, you know, my family escaped war-torn Germany. Like there's shit that my dad saw or whatever. Like we don't know those things, but until you kind of like are willing to work on yourself and figure out who you really are and what makes you happy, because so for so long, and we're built into the system where you go to school, you go job, you know, your life's set out for you. Your parent, you're gonna be a doctor, or who knows what people are. We're put into these roles where it's not what we're meant to be, and we just accept it as reality. And reality is you can do whatever the fuck you want. And no one can tell, you know, obviously there's rules and laws and all that thing, but creativity, there's no rules and laws to it. It's like, it's up to you to kind of create and manifest. And manifesting is truly, it works, you know, and it's like, I feel like Anthony Robbins or something right now, but like
I love it, dude.
1 year ago to the day, I was literally like, you know, not contemplating suicide, but I've never been that low, you know, like that my life couldn't, you know, get any better. Like I thought I was going to work 16 hours a day and pay my X amount of money and see my kids 2 hours on the weekends or however it was, like, and I kept feeding into the poor me mentality until one day I was just like, fuck, dude. I just left. I got out of the, you know, COVID happened. I'm living with my ex in the same place. It was fucking horrible, dude. And I kind of like, fuck it. I can be on the street. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to make the break. I'm going to get out of this situation and think positive. And like, I'm going to meet somebody. And the person that I wanted to meet, like in my mind, the vision, I wanted a like silver hair, silver foxed hockey mom, right? And again, like things work without you knowing. I got involved with an autism charity like 7 years ago. I'm now a board member. Brenda's son's on the spectrum. My kids weren't on the spectrum. Now it's like I meet my partner Brenda and I meet her son Braden, and she's just like, "You're so good with him," and I'm just like, "Well." Yeah, I think this is me doing that autism thing, preparing me to meet you, right? And I'm going to have a son on the spectrum, like, you know, and he's not my son, but he is. Like, I treat him like he's my son. And those are things that are like the universe telling you things that you just don't know why or what. And you just kind of like sometimes let it happen. And she was the same way. She's like, I want to meet an artist, someone, you know, that makes music, you know, like her list was like this insane list of like, this person, all her friends, this person doesn't exist. You're dreaming. You're never going to find him. Right. And I mean, I'm kind of like, exactly. She envisioned me. Right. And I am 1 in a trillion. You are, you know, like 100%. I tell her, I'm like, fuck, like you're my unicorn because you're just so perfect. And like everything that I need is she like compliments me to the point of like, we're starting businesses. Like she's like monetizing my phone, like I'll say something like, oh, let's do that. Like, hey, that's a great idea, right? Treating me like how I feel like I am. Like, I feel like I'm smart. I feel like for so long I just played this crazy person that everyone just thought I was nuts. And but it was all a game, and it was all like, I played them, like I invented this character, whether it was to just hide my inefficiencies or whatever I lacked, and just blew it up and be like, I'm going for it, like full on, full tilt, and like I said, like when I made that break and I envisioned who this person was going to be, and I met her, and it was like on Tinder, on fucking Tinder. And she like, we both were like, cause I hadn't dated, like, like I've been married was like 14, I was with my wife 14 years. So I was always like at work, you guys are so lucky, like Tinder, like this is a joke. I had to go across the bar and ask someone to dance. Like, like you had to actually put some work. You had to be a character. Now it's just like, sexy ab shot and your car, and you got a date.
Yeah, it's a different game out there. I think I was just at the cusp of the whole internet dating. And so that must have been a new adventure for you.
Dude, I swiped through everyone. I couldn't, like, I'm just like, dude, I don't like, this sucks, and I went on one kind of date, and the girl was like, but she's a French woman. She's like, you're broken. Like, you are so broken. And I was just like, I didn't know what I wanted. I was out of the house, and I was just like, fuck, I gotta, and then from her, she's like, she told me like, get out of the house. Like, she basically was like an angel to me, this girl. And she just said, this is, cause she went through it too with a shitty marriage and got away from it. And I left, and I found Brenda, and now I'm like literally like I met her in July, but like a year ago is when I left. Like, I walked out of the house, and whatever happened, like I was sleeping on, actually Damien, who brought me over to your place. He let me sleep on his couch, or had an extra room. And then, yeah.
And here you are, man. And you look happy. You're glowing. You seem like you're in a really good place, man. And I'm happy to hear it, dude.
Oh, dude. I mean, like, I just know, like, there's people out there that are going to watch this that they're having a shitty day, or, like, and again, change your mindset, change how you see your reality, because it truly, we just, like, anything's created from our mind, right? This phone that we're talking on, some dude had a crazy idea. Everyone thought he was fucking stupid. It was the dumbest, like, you're an idiot. Dude, come on. It'll never work, right? And here we are now. The whole world uses this idea, this crazy idea. So no idea is crazy. Envision where you want to be. Find out, like, and don't, again, I always say shoot for the stars, but, like, again, part of the process, have lofty goals, but set attainable ones as well, so that when you get to it, you're like, okay, I got phase one's done, right? Like, okay, now I know it's working, right? Like, and again, like, be positive in your outlook, and don't condemn yourself to your mind and to, negative, because again, we are all, there's polar ice caps, there's magnets, like Insane Clown Posse here. Mirrors.
Your mind.
You know what I mean? Like, we truly, if you dream it, you can do it.
I love that you said that, because I'm actually doing like I have a business coach right now, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Like, I need help, just like a lot of people need help. You know what I mean? And most of it centers around communication and how language. Well, first of all, things start in our mind, like you said. Like, somebody thought of the phone, and everyone's like, you're fucking nuts. And now it's everywhere. Somebody thought of an airplane, and then they went out and built it, and now we're fucking flying around the world. Everything humans have ever created started with a thought, and then you speak it to reality. So, like, you communicate it to the world, and as you speak it and you talk about it, you put it out there. And, like, even if you're sitting at home alone, you could say shit, but it's just the the act of talking, communicating, and like putting things to words, because our brain thinks a lot in language. And so this communication coach that I'm dealing with now talks a lot about that, and it's a lot about the way we speak things into reality and like communicating as a team and all these different things. And it's really cool. It's stuff that I've kind of known, but it's a lot of new stuff. And I love that you said that, because I think, have you ever read Think and Grow Rich?
Yeah, I mean, there's like Wayne Dyer. There's a bunch of different people that have been talking about this, and obviously it's like you hear it all the time. Oh, but yeah. It fucking worked. Like when you really, really, really don't waver, and you say to yourself in your mind, "This is what I want. This is I'm focused on what I need or what I want out of life." And literally, like self-doubt, right? All these doubts, that's your subconscious, like just like, putting up roadblocks for you to get what you really want, like like it just seems crazy. Like it seems totally nuts. So like even like Brenda had this picture, like almost like a design board of me, of who, dark eyes, like, vision, like envisioned it, and literally vision, like she made me come into her life, right? Mine wasn't as deep, but it was like, she's a silver fox, she's like a businesswoman, she's does quite well and has kids and is okay. And she's, obviously she's with me, so she's got to be a little crazy because I'm nuts, but you gotta be, you really truly like, be yourself, because that's, no one else can be you. So that's one thing you got, every single person, no one else is you, so there's that positive. So there you go. Start with that one positive thing. I'm me. No one else is me. Like, hey, that's good. Like your mind is already turned on to positivity, then, where did my mom, just think of good things. Think of all the good things in your life.
One thing it took me a long time to kind of, I used to be very hardwired negative thinking, right? And not in like I'm a dickhead kind of way, but like in a fucking, like I'd be like, oh shit, like if we don't get this is gonna happen to the business, or like my personal relationship's gonna implode, or just it would always come back to this like negative thought. And I used to just play it off like, oh, I'm just like a realist or whatever bullshit. But it's like, no, it was fucking negative, And there's something about being well, first of all, the human mind can't have more than one emotion at one time. So you can't be like sad and happy at the same time. So if you like just tone in and like take the time to be grateful for something, it changes the way your emotions are flowing, and you can get back to like a good positive place. But it just takes like that moment of like acknowledging it, slowing down, thinking about something you're grateful for, and then getting back at it,
Well, I mean, even meditation, right? Meditation is a means for you to let go of anything in this physical realm that is weighing you down, right? Like all these thoughts, all those negative thoughts, right? Like I don't meditate, but I know I probably should sometimes. Same. But like I really think it's about letting go of all those things that have held you back, right? And it's fear, a lot of it's fear, a lot of it's, generational trauma that you don't even know you have. I would say mushrooms are a good thing to try sometimes. It helps you heal, like anything to expand your mind. And I think the one thing about mushrooms is it puts everything front and center. If you've ever had a trip on mushrooms, you kind of like everything you've been putting behind, it comes right out in your face, and you got to deal with it, and it's healing. Like a lot of people with PTSD, a lot of like, it can cure you of alcoholism and drug addiction, all this kind of stuff. So I don't know how I got on the mushroom shit,
but the microdosing thing, my wife does it for depression actually, and like
Yeah.
anxiety.
Oh, it's
and stuff,
insane.
And the
I do
microdosing
it.
really works. I mean, I've had plenty of mushroom trips, and I've had great mushroom trips, and then I've had the bad ones. It's funny you said that, like it puts things front and center, because I'm like, fuck, there's been trips where I'm like so anxious, and I'm like, I need to get away from everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's probably just like my shit coming up, you know, and I'm
It
like,
is.
this is too much.
Totally. Totally
Yeah.
is, you know, because you're basically tapping in to your spirit. You know, you're tapping into the true mechanisms of who you are, and not the facade and the BS. And I think as you get older too, we both probably like, ah, man, I did some stupid stuff when I was like, I cared about things that I don't care about anymore. There's things that I held tight that I'm like, why the fuck did I worry or concern myself with these things? You know, and you know, obviously age and understanding and life, you kind of, puts everything into perspective. I think having kids puts everything into a totally different perspective. Like I'm not doing it for me anymore, you know, like I want to attain generational wealth for my kids, you know, like I didn't grow up with anything, and I don't, when I was a kid, I always thought I was going to have money. I was going to live in a castle and have Porsches and whatever, right? But I didn't have the drive to like, oh, I'm going to make that happen. Like, that wasn't I was like, I'm going to have as much fun, and then later on in life, after I've done everything I could, then I'm going to start making money, and that'll be my joy and things that bring me joy. And it's not, and money has nothing to do with it. It's creating things for others, you know, like bringing my friends and helping them, like my family. It's like, okay, we're starting these things. How can I get my family involved? How can I get my brothers, or, you know, bring everyone into the fold? All the people that I know and love, I want them to join in on the success, you know, because they helped me with my success. They supported me, you know?
Totally. And you said it already, but the universe provides for people who help people is like what kind of a motto I live by now. And, you know, I look at like what I've created with my businesses, and, you know, there's lots of things that aren't perfect. Nothing's near perfect, but I can be proud of the fact that like I've created an economy based around the recycling of clothing, where like, you know, we contribute to a lot of people's lives in like a meaningful way, where they can feel good about the work they're doing. It's helping the planet, and they can make a living and have a career at this, and we're growing it. And sometimes I have to like reflect back on that to put me out of like a shitty business head, right? Where it's like, proud of what we're doing here and what we've created, and proud of the people that we help, you know?
Yeah. I mean, in the end, you know, no one's going to remember, you know, the kind of car you drove, or, you know, they're going to remember the type of person you were. Right. And I mean, right now I feel like pretty confident that if I passed away, like no one's going to really speak bad about me, you know, like, and I've made it a mission to make sure no one would. And if they're upset, I deal with it, you know, and I always, if my friends are fighting, I can't deal with it. I need peace. Peace is like number one. And that was something too, like with Brenda or whatever, what I really, really wanted was peace, you know, peace of mind, peace in life, peace in everything, you know, because once you find that, then you kind of, you're set. Like even like we could be homeless, Brenda, but I'm like, I found peace with you and I love you. Like it doesn't, you know, which is only just going to create more wealth because we're in love and we're doing awesome shit. Like
I think that is such an awesome tidbit. And for everyone out there listening, think about what they're going to write on your gravestone. Just what Jason said. And that'll lead you in the right path to being a good human.
Always.
And I think that's a good place to call it.
To end it?
My man.
Dude, I'm so stoked. I can't wait. When I get up to Squamish, we're going to hang. I guess if you're in the city, you're in the city right now, or what?
I'm at my office right now. Yeah, same office.
And that's down at the same place that I showed up that one day?
Yeah. I'm here most days. We might be moving in the near future. Not sure. Got a few things up in the air, but I've had this warehouse for like 10,
Forever.
11 years now. Yeah. Crazy.
Awesome, dude. So stoked. I feel honored that you asked me to do this because,
Yeah, no, I'm stoked, dude. That was really fun.
Connections.
That was great to chat. You know, you're the
It's just good
you're the Dos Equis man of my generation.
But it's good to link with people that maybe you never like. I've never had a conversation like this actually with anyone, because it's very new to me, this whole belief and idea of visualization. And you've done it. We've all done it our whole life. We just don't realize that when you envision things and you put it in your mind, when Michael Jordan got cut from his 9th grade basketball team, he made it happen, right? He knew, envisioned what he wanted to do. Like, you don't get anywhere without that goal, is looking and seeing what your goal is. Shoot for the stars, but have, realistic expectations, and every success, take it in stride and continue going up, right?
Yeah.
Love you, buddy.
Love you too, man.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Truly appreciate it. As always, if you want to support the podcast, if you learned something from this, if it entertains you, please support the Patreon. You can find that down below, a link down below to the Patreon. It's basically my OnlyFans without dick pics. You get all kinds of extra content. So enjoy. See you on the next one.